Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Mala Sudha Kumbha Vibodha Mudra Vidya Virajat Karavari Jatam Apara Karunya Sudam Burashim Shri Sharadambam Pranastosmi Nityam Sharada Sharadambuja Vadana Vadanambuje Sarvada Sarvada Smakam Sannidhim Kriyat शङ्कारूपेण मच्चित्तम् पङ्कीकृतमभूद्यया किङ्करीयस्य सामाया शङ्कराचार्यमाश्रये प्रह्लादवरदो देवो यो नृसिंहः परो हरिः नृसिंहोपासकम् नित्यम् तम् नृसिंहगुरुम् भजे श्रीसच्चिदानन्दशिवाभिनव्यनृसिंहभारत्यभिधान्यतीन्द्रान् विद्यानिधीन् मन्त्रनिधीन् सदात्मनिष्ठान् भजे मानवशम्भुरूपान् सदात्मध्याननिरतं विषयेभ्यः पराङ्मुखं नौमि शास्त्रेषु निष्णातं चन्द्रशेखरभारतीम् विवेकिनं महाप्रज्ञं धैर्यौदार्यक्षमानिधिं सदाभिनवपूर्वं तं विद्यातीर्थगुरुं भजे अज्ञानां जाह्नवीतीर्थं विद्यातीर्थं विवेकिनां सर्वेषां सुखदं तीर्थं भारतीतीर्थमाश्रये विद्याविनयसम्पन्नं वीतरागं विवेकिनं वन्दे वेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञं विदुशेखरभारतीम् Om. Namaste everyone and many thanks to Swaminathan ji for his very kind introduction. I'm not sure whether those words would apply in this case, but I'm still grateful to him for having said this. So, over the last 4 months or so, we have been looking at Atma Bodha, and it is a great fortune for us that we have the opportunity to think about Vedanta during this very auspicious day of Vijayadashami. Just like the Divine Mother defeated Mahishasuran and brought dharma and peace to the world, let us pray that the same Divine Mother, Sharadamba, through her long standing hoary tradition, which is preserved to this day in the Sringeri Sharada Parampara, that knowledge, which is none other than Amba's true nature, may that knowledge and may that Amba destroy the ignorance that is present in our hearts. May it open our minds to new vistas, to everlasting peace and happiness. So, let us take on this occasion, it is always good to turn our minds back to how this work has evolved so far. What have we learned so far? Let's do a recap. In the first 5 verses of the Atma Bodha, Shankaracharya had very succinctly presented the entire spiritual journey of humanity. Therein, he presented that one has to first lead a religious life by which one gets Jnana Yogyata. Mahasannidhanam earlier today in his message re-emphasized this, that while the fourfold pursuits, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, are available to all, in order to qualify for moksha, in order to get ready for the sadhana by which one attains that moksha, one needs to have some yogyata, the capacity to do the jnana sadhana by which one can attain jnana. And that capacity has to be earned. It is one of the very first principles that we must understand before commencing Vedanta. We are not restricting Vedanta to a select few. Rather, what we are saying is that it is the duty of every one of us to make us worthy enough to commence on this journey. And the reason is that only a suitable candidate, one who has gained that jnana yogyata, will get the benefit of the jnana sadhana. Because the aim of our forefathers, our ancestors, is to ensure that humanity crosses the ocean of samsara, gains the knowledge of the Atma by which one can free themselves. So, therefore, Shankaracharya, in this long standing, anadi, beginningless tradition of jnana, first starts the Atma Bodha by talking about the qualifications for jnana sadhana. He talked about the fourfold qualifications being viveka, dispassion, the ability to differentiate between what is real and what is unreal, vairagya, dispassion, viveka being differentiation or discrimination, vairagya being dispassion. The nature of the mind is to constantly crave for the objects in front of it. But this craving itself is a distraction for the mind when it's doing the jnana sadhana. Therefore, one important skill set that one needs to possess is vairagya or dispassion, by which one turns away from finite, mundane, material pleasures and focuses on the spiritual. And this turning away from the finite and turning towards the infinite is what is known as dispassion. That is, one is prepared to live without these material pleasures so that one is ready mentally to accept the infinite. The third qualification is the Shamadhi Shatkam, which Mahasannidhanam earlier referred today as Indriya Nigraham, the control of the senses. Because having that control of the senses is absolutely essential, because the senses are the means by which we see the world, and the senses drag the mind towards external objects. Therefore, if we need to employ the mind fruitfully towards the achievement of jnanam, Atma Jnanam specifically, then we should also be in a position to have sufficiently trained the senses so that the mind does not get constantly distracted. So there are various features of this which we referred to in the previous classes. But briefly, these are the Shamadhi Shatka Sampatti. Acharya had earlier referred today as Indriya Nigraham. The final thing is Mumukshutvam, or a burning deep desire for liberation. Because unless one has that desire for liberation, the effort that is needed to be expounded to achieve it, one will not be prepared to do. So, if we say that moksha is one of the many things that I want, then that means that the mumukshutvam is not very tibram, it is not very focused. When that desire fructifies into this is all that I want, because I realize that what that I am seeking, this atma that I'm seeking, is the only reality that there is, and attaining and depending on that only reality is the only way for everlasting peace, security, and happiness. Only then will one have the desire, that burning desire for moksha. So, therefore, viveka, discrimination, vairagya, dispassion, shamadhi shatkam or indriya nigraham, control of the senses and the mind, and finally, mumukshutvam or a deep desire for liberation are the fourfold qualifications or jnana yogyata. So how do we attain this jnana yogyata? Acharya had said, Shankaracharya had said in the beginning of the Atma Bodha that the way one attains this fourfold qualification, the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, if you will, is through leading a religious life, through leading a disciplined life. By doing karma that has been prescribed for us in a manner that is not desirous of the results of the karma, but doing it because that is my kartavya, or what I have been allocated by the Shastra, by Ishvara. If one does it with such an attitude, then the karma will produce the result of the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti. It will make one spiritually mature. And once one has done that, then one can commence the spiritual journey or Vedanta through Shravanam, listening of the scriptures, Mananam, thinking about the scriptures, and Nididhyasanam, which is a deep contemplation and meditation and abidance in that reality that one has gained through Shravanam and Mananam. So this twofold path. So broadly speaking, the attainment of the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti through through performing karma in a dispassionate, not results oriented manner is called karma yoga. And the performance of the Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam, the listening to the scriptures through a guru for a sustained period of time, the cogitation upon the meaning, the resolution of various doubts that one may have on what the scripture has told, which is actually essentially Mananam, and finally the abidance in the clear conviction on Atma Jnana, which is Nididhyasanam. The latter three, the Sravanam, Maranam, Nididhyasanam, is grouped into one sadhana called the Jnana Yoga. So Karma Yoga gets the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, the entry qualification for Vedanta. Then one does Jnana Yoga, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, through which one gets Jnana. And once one gets Jnana, Atma Jnana, the journey is over. So Shankaracharya had said there is no choice in this journey. So everyone has to first get Jnana Yogyata through Karma Yoga and then Jnana afterwards. It may take one Janma, it may take 100 Janmas. So there is an option in terms of how long we want to go through this journey, but there is no option in terms of what steps are needed. So we may say, okay, in this life, I want to focus on material benefits. I'd rather postpone the spiritual journey. So that choice we have, because ultimately the Sanatana Dharma system is based on free will. So what we have the ability to choose what path that we want to walk on. But if moksha is the ultimate end goal, the life's purpose for you, then karma yoga first, jnana yoga later is a compulsory journey that one has to go through. So Shankaracharya first said why jnana was necessary for knowledge. So this had started from the sixth verse of the Atma Bodha and goes on until the 14th verse. So the purpose of this is to convince why jnana is necessary. Now everybody hears about Vedanta, everybody hears about spiritual knowledge, but unless one understands the nature of the problem, one will not be able to get the conviction in the solution to the problem. So what is the problem Shankaracharya had first articulated? So he started by saying, what is the nature of samsara? And he said, the nature of samsara is finitude, it is limitation. We are think of ourselves as a limited being, and that limited being with so many limitations, both physical limitation, mental limitation, psychological limitations, is struggling in a world which seems to oppress that limited individual. And so all the problems that we classify as samsara, the problem of kartrutvam, bhoktritvam, the problem of krodha, kama, raga, dvesha, kartrutvam means doership. I do these things so that I get this result. I experience these results. That is bhoktritvam. So kartrutvam leads to bhoktritvam. You do and you will sow, so you shall reap. First you sow and then you reap. That is, first this kartrutvam is doing, and reaping or enjoying or experiencing the outcome of that is bhoktrutvam. So kartrutvam and bhoktrutvam is samsara, krodha is samsara, anger, the mental agitation, sorrow, depression, attachment, hatred, all of these are the essentially the nature of samsara. These are all the effects, the symptoms that we see. But what is the root cause? And Shankaracharya performs that root cause analysis of the problem. He says, the reason why you are suffering so much is because You do not know who you are. You do not know your nature. If you and the problem is, so what is that thing? That is ignorance. Ignorance is obstructing us from knowing who we really are. Now, whenever we have ignorance, ignorance in itself is not the problem, but the effects of ignorance is the problem. So, for example, if we are walking down a passageway where it is not very well lit and we see a coiled object and immediately we think that is a snake, but in reality, it is a rope. Now, if we had not seen the coiled object at all, there wouldn't be any problem. We would keep going. So, merely the ignorance of the rope is not the problem. But what does that ignorance do? That ignorance creates a projection, the projection of false duality. It projects the snake where there is only rope. And that projected snake, that projected duality, the mithya prapancha is what is the problem. So the ignorance of the self leads to the projection of duality. And that projection of duality has caused all sorts of problems. Now, Shankaracharya had used the example of dream to convey this. So he said, like the dream problems we face, it is because of the ignorance of who we really are. And that ignorance is called sleep. So when we are sleeping, we do not know that we are so and so individual who has who lives in this house, who has this family. All of those things are forgotten when we go to sleep. And then what happens? In the dream, we project another identity to ourselves. We project a body, we project a dream world. And this is the next idea that was conveyed previously. So Shankaracharya had said this this projection that is the cause of the problem. There are two kinds of projections. The first projection he had talked about in the 8th verse, which is the macro projection. So here Acharya had talked about the samashti adhyasa, the projection of the universe. In the dream, we project a dream world. We project a dream palace. We project a dream mountain, dream rivers. We create a complete universe in the dream. And that is the samashti adhyasa that Acharya had talked about in the 8th verse. So this includes all elements of the universe: space, time, elements, galaxies, etc. So this is what Acharya had talked about when he said Jaganti, we project the worlds, the galaxies. And the second type of false projection that he had talked about is the micro projection that we had seen last in verse number 9, which is the projection at the individual level, or the Vyashti Adhyasa. And so again, going back to the dream example, having projected a dream world, what do? We enter that dream world we project a dream identity. We project a dream body. We use that dream body, and that projection, that micro projection of the dream body is what is known as Vyashti Adhyasa. So moving from the dream to this world that we see in the waking state. Shankaracharya had said, just like we do a samashti adhyasa, a macro projection of the dream world, this world that we see in front of us is also a samashti adhyasa. It is a macro projection only. And not only that, we project this physical body, and this physical body, we say, this is who I am. I am so and so. I am a human being. I am a male. My name is this. I am so old. Then we add, this is my family. These are my possessions. All of these are subsequent projections that we keep doing on and on and on and on and on because of the root problem. We do not know who we are. We do not know what this Atma is. Who am I? That question has been obscured, has essentially not been asked. We do not know that nature. We don't even ask ourselves who we are. And therefore, we project a completely different identity to our true nature. And that was the Vyashti Adhyasa. Now, so this is what, so in the 8th verse, for example, the macro projection, Acharya had said, Upadane khiladhare jaganti parameshware sargasthiti layanyanti budbudaniva varini. So just like um, bubbles are merely projections upon the water, in the sense they are not something different from water, they are water alone, but they appear to be different. Similarly, the worlds appear in me, who is the material cause, the substance of the universe. And he had used the word Parameshwara. Essentially, Atma is being likened to Ishvara, and this, in a sense, is the Mahavakya. So, in that Parameshwara, who is none other than myself, this so many worlds appear and disappear just like bubbles in water. So the word Jaganti here referred to galaxies, and essentially this is talking about the macro projection. And then in the last session, we had looked at the 9th verse, wherein Acharya had said, Satchidatmani anusyute nitye Vishnu prakalpitaha vyaktayo vividha sarva hatake katakadivat. So here the word vyaktayaha refers to individual bodies being projected, the micro projection or the Vyashti Adhyasa. This solid body that we are experiencing, the pains and troubles that we have with this physical body, we know, and that we think is absolutely real. What Shankaracharya says is this solid body is in fact actually nothing. It is empty. It is insubstantial. How can that be? So Shankaracharya gives the example. Just like bangles in a gold. Hatake katakadivat. Now, suppose I take a bangle and ask, is this bangle a solid substance? What will we say? Everybody will say, of course it is a solid substance. Here I can hold it. It's got weight. Vedanta says the bangle is not a solid substance at all. The bangle does not even weigh 1 milligram. And everybody laugh at that statement. How is it possible? Vedanta says because bangle is only a name and a form that is given to gold. So when you say the bangle has weight, we will say the bangle has no weight. It is the gold that is giving the weight. When you say I can hold the bangle, we'll say you're not holding the bangle. The bangle is there's a name. How do you handle a name? You cannot hold a name. The name does not weigh anything. The form does not weigh anything. Similarly, this entire universe is only a name and a form for Brahman, which is why in the very first name of the Vishnu Sahasranamam, the first name of the Vishnu Sahasranama is what? Vishwam. Vishwam is a nama of Vishnu. The universe is a name for Brahman. And that is why Shankaracharya in this verse says Vishnu Prakalpitaha. In that Mahavishnu, who is none other than Atma, these micro bodies are also projected. These bodies that we take to be real are merely names and forms, appearances. The substance that gives it solidity is Brahman consciousness. It is existence given by consciousness that makes us say the body exists. Here it is. But really speaking, that existence is Brahman. It is not, it does not belong to the body. The body is merely an appearance, a name, and a form of that existence. So macro and the micro are both superimposed on the Atma, just like the dream macro, and micro dvaitam is resolved upon waking up, this waker's world, this universe, and this physical body is resolved on waking up to our higher nature. So, remembering the Dakshinamurti Stotram, Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam Pashyanatmani Mayaya Bahirivodbhutam Yatha Nidraya Yas Sakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Sri Gurumurtaye Namayidam Sri Dakshinamurtaye. So this is the very first verse of the Dakshinamurti Stotram by Adi Shankara Bhagavad. And so what does he say? Yes, Sakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye. He who knows his own nature when he wakes up as what? Swatmanamevadvayam. It is Atma and nothing but the Atma that exists. It is that individual who has woken up from the dream of this universe and the dream that I am a finite jiva. The world will continue. The world will continue even for that Jnani. How will it continue? Not in reality, it will continue as a projection. Like a movie that is going on top of the screen, the world will keep on going on, but it will not touch me, who am the screen upon which this universe is projected. That Adhara that I am, this universe will not touch. Just like a mirage water, we see when we're going, when you're driving somewhere, or you go to a desert or a very hot place, in the distance we see mirage water. So the sand is burning, but we see water on top. That is just an optical illusion. Will that water wet the sand? No. Similarly, when you know that this universe is merely a projection upon me, how can that universe cause me problems anymore? That appearance may continue even after that. The mirage I continue seeing even after I know it is a mirage. But I no longer get deluded by it. I no longer rush headlong towards it thinking it is water. Nor do I run away from it thinking it is a snake. In the case of the rope snake, there is neither the raga that makes me run towards objects, nor there is the dvesha which makes me run away from objects. That appearance is just that, an appearance. That is why Acharya had said, Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyam. The world is like the reflection of a city in a mirror. That reflection has no reality. It is merely an appearance. Anyway, so with that, we had, I think we have done a summary of what we have seen so far. Now let us look at the next verse. Let us read that. Yathakasho hrishikesho nanopadhigato vibhuhu tadbhedat bhinnavad bhati tannashe kevalo bhavet. So what is Acharya saying in this verse? So in this verse, Acharya is saying the one Paramatma is indivisible, undivided whole. Now, because of the ignorance that we spoke about, when the macro and micro universe is projected, the Paramatma himself appears as the manifold pluralistic Jivatmas. The appearance of plurality is being explained here using the example of space. So the natural question is, whenever we say Swatmanam eva dvayam, Atma is alone that exists, Neha nanasti kinchana, there is no plurality here whatsoever. The natural question that the mind asks is, how is that possible? How can we accept your statement that there is no plurality? How can one appear as many? To which Shankaracharya says, let me tell you, my good fellow, just like space. Now, space is actually all pervading, indivisible. It is everywhere. But once we start putting objects in it, we start building objects in it, we build pots. We build rooms, we build houses, we build auditoriums, we build stadiums. And then what we say, we call each of these different things. We say pot space. So the space that is enclosed within the pot, we call it, oh, that's a new pot space that has come. Similarly, there is a room space, there is a hall space, there's a kitchen space, there is a auditorium space. So not when we are building the pots, rooms, walls, we start giving the space enclosed within it different names also. Then what we do, then we remove the word space and we say fill the pot with water. We say come inside the room, there is a lot of space here, there is room here, we say. What does that mean? There is room here. It means there is space here. So we are creating boundaries or divisions within one space, and we are saying we are forgetting the space within it. First, we say there is pot space, room space, hall space, etc. Then we give up the word space, space, space. We say there is a hall, there is a living room, there's a 3-bedroom house, 5-bedroom house. What is that? Essentially, it is talking about the space within that house. Because if all I'm interested is in the walls, why am I worried about the, I have my square foot area is this much of my house. So what we are really interested in is the space that is enclosing those walls. We're interested in the space that is enclosing the vessel. We're interested in the space that is enclosing the room, the house. But we have forgotten the space. We are only talking about the objects. So then what we say is, oh, this hall is very big. That room is very small. The bathroom is very small. The kitchen is very small. The bedroom is small, but the hall is big. What does that mean? The hall is not big. The space contained within it is big or small. And so now we start dividing that space into small space, big space, etc. Shankaracharya says the divisions are not real. It is not that space is within the wall. The wall cannot cut space. It is not that there is space within the pot. The pot cannot divide that space into pot space and not non-pot space. Why is that? Because if space can really be divided by walls, by objects, then we should be able to cut it from one place and move it to some other place. So there is a lot of space in the outskirts of a city. Let us cut that space and bring it inside our house, and so that our house looks big. Can we do that? No. Really speaking, these objects are incapable of dividing space, but we forget that. And then we say, oh, this room is big, that room is small, this space is big, that space is small. There are many spaces. No, there is no plurality of space. There is only one space. There are seeming divisions of that space, but in reality, there is no difference within space itself. So Shankaracharya says the same error we are making in relation to consciousness also. Consciousness also, like space, is all pervading and undivided. It is the one consciousness that is available within one body and other body, inside the body and outside the body. But what do we say? I am within this physical body. We say, I am fat, I am small, I am thick, I'm thin, not thick. I'm small, I'm big, right? I am intelligent, I'm not intelligent. I am suffering, I am hungry. But who? At conscious is none of those things. We say that person is stronger than me. No, that consciousness is no different from me. It is the one consciousness that is seemingly differentiated into different bodies. And because the body is different and reacting, and the mind sees the body, we say, I am, I am, by thinking of I in the context of the body and the mind, not knowing that the entire consciousness is the I, but the limited notions of ego that we associate with the body and the mind are only seeming differences within that universal I, the Atma is only one. The differences of that Atma into different eyes not meaning eyes meaning aham, that I. The difference into many, many different kinds of egos is only seeming, just like the seeming split of space into many portions. So in the Mandukya Karika also, Gaudapadacharya uses this example of space being divided, seemingly divided, to illustrate the point that consciousness also is seemingly divided, but it is not really divided. So he says, and in the Mandukya Karika, Gaudapadacharya says, नाकाशश्च घटाकाशो विकार अवयवौ यथा नैवात्मनः सदा जीवो विकारः अवयवौ तथा. He says, just like pot space is neither the product or a part of all pervading space. In fact, there is not space within the pot is within space. That is the mistake we are making. The room is not, space is not within the room. The room is within space. The walls are within space. So what is enclosed does not become a part of what is everywhere. What is the enclosure is only seeming, it is not a real enclosure of space, because these objects cannot in reality really cut space. Similarly, these bodies, this universe cannot differentiate consciousness. It is the one undivided whole, and any differences that we see are only that, seeming differences. Differences that we see are seeming differences. There is no real difference at all. Now we may ask, but isn't the space inside the pot smaller than the space outside the pot? Therefore, shouldn't inside space be part of outside space? Again, we will say space is not inside the pot or outside the pot. The pot is inside space. Therefore, all pots are inside space. So coming back to this verse, Nanau Padhigato, just like one space is obtained, is available in different enclosures, Tadbhedat, because of the plurality and the differences, the variety in those enclosures, Tad here refers us to the Upadhi, the enclosure. Akashaha bhinnavad bhati. Space appears as though it is manifold and varied. Tannashe kevalo bhavai. When the enclosures are destroyed, it appears as though space has become one. So we think in the Ajnana Avastha, I was a finite individual. Now I have become infinite in the Jnana Avastha. No. Gaudapadacharya and Shankaracharya are saying you are infinite even in your Ajnana Avastha. Even when you think you are ignorant, you are infinite. But you don't know that. That is all. So the appearance of plurality is because of the appearance of the enclosure, and when the enclosure is destroyed, the differences are also destroyed. So it does not mean that we have to destroy the physical body or destroy the world. No. When the ignorance because of which we attribute reality to the body and the universe is destroyed, the body and the universe are seemingly destroyed also. In reality, they don't even exist to be destroyed. They are merely an appearance. So once with knowledge, we realize that there are these appearances, but there is no reality to these appearances, then these appearances cease to affect us. Then the differences that we attributed because of these appearances, the reality of these appearances, those differences are also destroyed, because difference is what? Difference is merely a notion. The Appearance being reality is what? Appearance being reality is also just a notion. When the notion of reality to these appearances goes, the notion of reality to the differences also goes. And therefore, the seeming difference of consciousness is destroyed seemingly. There is no difference to begin with. There is no difference in the end. So if that is slightly difficult, essentially we can say nashe kevalo bhavet essentially means with ignorance, we realize that consciousness is only one. So with when the pot is destroyed physically, we think that the pot space has become one with total space, but really speaking, the space is space alone. Kevalaha akasha. It is space alone. Akasha is only there, but because of the presence of the pot, we say there is pot space. When the presence of the pot goes away, we say there is space has become one. So we are Jivatma now, and with sadhana we will become Paramatma, is what some people may think by this, but that is a misconception. I was and I am, I ever will be Paramatma. There is no difference whatsoever. So until now we saw the example. Now we have to read the same verse using the word Atma instead of Akasha. So here he's saying Tatha Rishikeshaha Vibhu. So here Rishikeshaha means Atma. In the way, I, the Atma, am Vibhu, meaning all pervading. I am one, I am indivisible, I am available in each and every body. Nanopadhigataha. Upadhi here refers to the body. Tad bhedat, because of the plurality and differences in the body, which are the containers for this consciousness, seeming enclosures for this consciousness. I, the Atma, the Rishikesha, Bhinnavad Bhati, I appear as though I am different Jivatmas, different from each other. I am not different, only the container is different. And Tannashe Kevalo Bhavet, in knowledge, when I negate the containers as the Jaktaya Prakalpitaha of the previous verse, as projected bodies, the Jashti projections, the micro projections, like in the dream. So no physical negation is required. The body doesn't have to be destroyed, or the world doesn't have to be destroyed. Merely understanding them as unreal is sufficient. When I negate the containers, I alone remain. And that is the meaning of the Mahavakya Aham Brahmasmi. Until this knowledge is gained, samsara will continue. Even if one goes to Swargaloka, samsara will continue. So let us, on this Vijayadashami day, commence, rather recommence, continue the jnana sadhana that we are doing, the efforts that we are doing towards karma yoga and chitta shuddhi, and let us meet once again in a month's time for the next session of Atma Bodha. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.